Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Essential Therapies podcast with Dr. Cindy. In case you didn't know, Essential Therapies is just getting ready to wrap up its 9th year in business. So in preparation for her 10th year, today's episode is essentially a recap of what she's learned over these past 9 years, presented as an interview of sorts between her and I. She has some really exciting things planned and is very excited to move forward and celebrate her next 10 years. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to a little bit of a different episode of Essential Therapies podcast. I'm Brad Augustyniak, the producer of the show, here with, of course, Dr. Cindy. And today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different format where we're going to essentially interview Dr. Cindy and ask her some questions and just take the show from there. So, good morning.
Hi. Great to be doing this. Looking forward to this year, actually. Found out and realized that I'm coming up on my 9th year. Like, this time of year just reminds me of things that were going on this time of year previously, and it's kind of amazing that we're finishing up our 9th year and beginning our 10th year. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's amazing. What have you learned over these past 9 years? I mean, I know there's a lot, but can you sort of summarize it a little bit or kind of give a sort of a very brief recap, if you will? What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned over the past 9 years?
Wow, yeah, and I could talk about that for probably 9 hours.
I know you can.
so much, really. But the main thing, there's probably comes into two categories as I'm thinking of this. One is there's this whole business aspect, which is difficult, right, to say the least. And most people who are technicians, in a sense, like myself, we're focused on what it is that we do, and our craft or our art, which I think of myofascial release as more of an art, and just this whole that whole aspect is one thing, and usually that's where our focus goes. That's what we want to be able to do. And so we put up a shingle and, hey, I want to do this business, and to be able to do your passion. But there's this whole huge other thing called the business, which is really the tough part. And I've made ridiculous amount of mistakes in that department, but hey, that's how we learn and grow and shift and pivot. And I've done a lot of that, and I've made some mistakes along the way, but it's all in the effort of learning, I suppose. And so there's a lot that I started out with just my little room that I was renting, and it was just me. And so now we have a team, and we've had various changes with that along the way. And my eyes kind of get bigger than my stomach sometimes. There's so much to learn and to teach people that I want to be able to provide all of it, and you can't always do that, So there's been a lot of learning in that aspect. And then the other side of that is in my practice as a therapist and doing physical therapy, exercise physiology, and being this myofascial release expert of learning every day. I feel like every single day I get to learn from my patients. And even though I've been doing this, I was introduced to this work over 28 years ago now.
Wow.
And really have the majority of this time been doing myofascial release, because very, very early on, even though it was in a setting where I couldn't focus on just that, I would add maybe 15 minutes of myofascial release with my acute care patients in the hospital, and you see amazing things in 15 minutes oftentimes, and so it really drew me in, and that's when I knew I wanted to do more of this work exclusively, because everybody just needs it, and so every single person is different. And in the John Barnes myofascial release approach, we are looking at everyone uniquely. So there's not a protocol where we do, step 1, 2, 3 through 10 or whatever every time. We look at the person when they arrive, and even though they may have been there 10 times, you're looking at them fresh and new. Yeah. So you're learning every day, and it still happens that I'll just be blown away after a technique or a session with someone, and just so grateful. So you never get bored. There's so much to learn, and I think one of the key things over the last few years that has really become key is this whole idea of self-treatment and learning how to treat your own body as much as you possibly can. And it has been key for me because 28 years ago when I first learned about this, I needed this work desperately, but there was nobody around here to do it for me. And so I had to travel, and then I had extensive training as an exercise physiologist, of course, and teaching many fitness classes, and knew my body really well, but then I didn't know my body really well. And taking extensive yoga instructor training helped me with that around the same time that I really started diving in and learning more about myofascial release. And so I put those things together for myself because I was hurting so much. And, over all those years, that has just continued to develop. And even in this past year, in fact, we started this show with my accident that I had, crashing my face in the ground. And what I learned even just from that incident and then my self-treatment afterward has just been profound. Like, it just catapulted my awareness and my own personal skills in self-treatment, and then my ability to be able to help others with that same thing. So really, there's just so much, and to be able to, encapsulate that in a little bit is kind of hard. But yeah, it definitely is something that I should ponder more about and further develop. So yeah, great question.
Yeah, you've talked a lot about the self-treatment, self-care, and the importance of it, and not just, from a therapy perspective, but also the importance of healthy eating and sort of that lifestyle, self-care, which I think is really interesting. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so hence my term change from self-care to self-treatment, because I do think that self-care involves, it's kind of an umbrella, right, of a lot of different things. And so, nutrition might not be self-treatment. Well, maybe it is, but I mean, it's more self-care, right? Yeah. Or sleep is very important. That's a self-care thing. I mean, so many items now, everything from the light that we allow into our eyes to, what we do first, half an hour after we wake up. I mean, so many things can be in that umbrella of self-care. Yeah. And it's definitely extensive for sure. And I'm still learning all the time. I mean, this, it's kind of my passion. So to try and feel better. I mean, we all want to feel better. We want to live better, and move more. And all of those things are key.
100%. Yeah. And I think for a lot of us too, as we age and we, sort of go through life and life gets busy, I think it just seems like that's such an important topic, and it's so important to just take care of yourself with whatever that means, self-care, self-treatment, whatever it is. I always think that's such a critical piece for anybody. Yeah. But especially I think as we get older, it's even more important.
Definitely. And I think where that starts is to improve our own self-awareness. Because if, there's all this stuff out there, and there's a lot of junk out there, really, and so how do we decipher all of that? Well, we have to learn to use ourselves as our own experiment. And the first thing with that is to be able to have good awareness, to be able to even assess, did this thing help me or did it not? I mean, there was a time when I couldn't tell the difference in my body. If I had eaten a cookie, how did my body react to that? I didn't notice anything, until I learned. And then I could tell, whoa, I can feel that difference. Same thing with whatever it is, whether it's an activity or lack of sleep or, something that you drink, whatever it may be, is to learn that self-awareness. And that's a huge piece of myofascial release, is being present in your body,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, that's interesting. I know I've learned so much over the last year about all these things, and the importance of it and how the myofascial, affects everything else. And it's just so fascinating. So what do you have planned for your 10th year now, as you're getting ready to enter this 10th year? What do you have planned for us? I mean, what are we going to see this year from Dr. Cindy and Essential Therapies?
So that's a tough one to really put into it. There's so many. So I always have, I see this big picture all the time. It's all these things I want to do. So I've had to narrow it down, right? And pick some things. I think one of the biggest pieces is education, to help people along their journey, so that will then help me with these other pieces that I have planned. So for example, this show is part of that, right?
Sure.
To be able to get this word out. It's amazing to me still how many people don't know what fascia really is, even the word biotensegrity, what is that? And even what is self-treatment? Like the idea of being able to tell the difference in your body before and after an activity or anything that you experience, So education is super important. But along those lines, I have some courses I'm excited to bring out. So I'm about ready to actually release my first online course on legs up the wall. So my favorite self-treatment technique. I mean, I have lots of them, but that's probably been by far the most universal that most patients will be consistent and compliant with, and they can actually see the difference, especially as they start to learn my approach to doing it, like really being, it almost becomes a meditation.
Yeah.
So a lot of people hear legs up the wall, like, oh yeah, I did that in yoga. So, yes, there's that, but this is like not your average legs up the wall. This is legs up the wall with a myofascial release and awareness approach and a total body consciousness approach, because what we want to do is be present in our body, mind, and kind of bring on this whole awareness that John Barnes teaches, this channel 3 and channel 5. And I don't know if we've talked about that, if you have heard that before.
Oh,
but
I have.
A little
yes.
bit, yeah. So John Barnes was teaching this work over 50 years ago now, and he wanted to help people understand this idea of being aware and being present in their body. So he came up with the analogy of like watching channel 3 or channel 5 on a TV, for example, just arbitrary numbers. And so channel 5 let's say channel 5 is the intellectual channel, right? It's where you're thinking, you're processing, you're very left-brained, and you're kind of in your headspace. And channel 3 is more of being in the present moment and being more heart-centered and feeling in your body and not thinking. So it's more feeling and more heart-centered, more right brain, not left brain, right? So this whole idea in Legs Up the Wall is we really bring ourselves into that channel 3. And what you can feel in your body is amazing once you start learning that practice. So anyway, that's going to be one of my first courses, and then also some online courses about other very specific self-treatment techniques. I plan to do also a series on neutral spine. So what's neutral spine? So it's core strengthening, right?
Oh,
so it's such a big thing. Everybody's like, core.
Yep.
But what I found over years of being a PT is that you see people doing all these crazy exercises for core, a lot of them very unsafe. But what is most important is to understand, what are we really working with here? What muscular system, what's happening, and how is the fascia involved in all of that, how it's connected? What if something is too tight? Is it actually working properly? What position should you be in? So basically teaching people how to be, like, what is neutral spine? Where is it? Where's a safe spot for my spine to be, especially if I'm going to lift something heavy, And then how can I strengthen or tone my core so that it's learning what neutral spine is, and I can be safe in various situations. So that's something I've been really passionate about teaching patients for years, and so I'm going to come up with a course for that as well. And then just as that kind of morphs into other self-treatment courses, I definitely want to do that. So that's kind of one aspect I want to bring on. I love exercise and teaching exercise. It was a big part of my early years before I even thought I was going to be a PT. I did a lot of fitness instructor stuff. At the university, I was a graduate assistant for a while, teaching students how to teach aerobics. So that was kind of like, and I loved that. I love helping people through those things. So the big exercise balls, the big physio balls. So years ago, I used to teach a class on that, and I'm going to start doing that. I guess one thing I told myself about a month ago, I'm like, I'm going to bring that class back one way or another, even if it's just online, because it's such a great practice. So I'd like to get into some more fitness things, and also some functional fitness. I have a passion also for the elderly population as they're deconditioning, and we see this all the time. I've seen it in my family members. I was really especially when my dad, he passed away a couple of years ago now almost, but he became very frail at the end, and he had a hard time. I was always trying to get him to exercise. Of course, trying to tell your family to do things sometimes is harder. But, people think that, I'm older now, okay, I'm 80, whatever, and I can't do X, Y, Z. Well, the body will still strengthen. You just have to know what to do, So one of the things that I run into a lot is, teaching this Legs Up the Wall, I have people say, I really can't get to the floor, very well. Well, guess what? If you stop getting to the floor, you're definitely not going to be able to get up from the floor. You know?
True.
So let's practice that. Like there is a way that we can learn how to, strengthen our bodies so that we can get down to the floor and back up. And it's an important, seems minuscule in some ways, but it's big as we begin to lose strength in our older years. It doesn't have to be that way. I remember many years ago doing my master's in exercise physiology, we came across this article and they had people in their 90s. I remember the range was like 92 to 95 or something. And they were putting them on a strength training program for 8 weeks and they were just doing lower body. And I forget all the parameters of the study now, but the bottom line was at the end of these 8 weeks, there was such a significant difference in this elderly 90-something population that almost all of them if they were using a walker, they went down to a cane. If they were using a cane, they got rid of their assistive device altogether. If they were having trouble going from sit to stand, they had no trouble. And it's just, this is normal exercise stuff. We know this as exercise physiologists, but so many people don't know that. And I have, made the mistake of assuming that people know this basic stuff, that is so common to people in my field. But people need to feel empowered that, hey, I can get better regardless of what my age is and what you're dealing with. Let's find at least something that you can do to get better. So I really would like to come out with some courses to help people with that and to help their function on a day-to-day level for sure.
Wow, I think that's great. I think that's really interesting. I think it's important to do that. Like I said, as there's an aging population, a lot of people just think, oh, well, I'm of a certain age, I'm just not mobile anymore. But that's not true. We've seen that.
Right, right. And there's so much to connect with that. And also, stress management is another thing that I've always been passionate about is teaching people some of the basic skills of managing stress. And, for forever now, they've been talking about, and I remember as early as the 90s, the NIH coming out and saying, that's National Institute of Health, that, up to 90% of all illnesses are related to stress.
Wow.
And there are skills to learn, 90%. Very simple ones, to decrease the effects of stress on your body, and it's just so important, and not enough people are, especially in this day and age. I mean, it's been stressful the last few years for so many people, and crazy illnesses are rising, and people are dying younger. Like there's definitely something we can do about that.
Sure.
So there needs to be some help in that department. But ultimately, I'm hoping to bring more patients to Essential Therapies. People need hands-on work.
100%.
And people even in our area don't realize that we're here. So part of this is just getting that out.
Yeah, and if you haven't been to her studio, it's amazing. I mean, it really is. It's beautiful. It's very nice. It's very modern. It's very comforting. You have the sense and the visual pieces that just make it a very nice, warm place to be. And I think that's important for a lot of people. It's very welcoming, I think. So. Well,
our body is, I think of it as our body-mind, and so much of healing encompasses everything. It's not just about, having a place that looks great or whatever, but how does it feel? Like one of my favorite things, and we've been there for 3 years now, is when people say, wow, I love the feel in here. Like that's what I was going for, is to have this feel of love, basically, because that's what it comes back to. I'll never forget John Barnes saying that in the first course I took of his was, it all comes back to love. And, well, what does that mean when you're talking about, fascia or the body? And it's true. Like if we don't love ourselves, for one thing, everybody is kind of familiar with that, but there's a huge struggle with that, I find. And I see it when I'm trying to teach patients self-treatment and they're having difficulty with that. It's about feeling deserving, that you have this ability to help yourself and you keep not doing it, what is the deeper reason to that? And how can we get to that? And how can we help you improve upon that so that your life can be better ultimately? It's deep in a lot of ways, but it's real.
That's very interesting. Yeah, because a lot of people don't think about that, that mental aspect of it with regards to the physical aspect, whether it be rehabilitation or preventative or whatever it might be. I think that's an important link.
Absolutely, and it's this mind-body connection, and it's our emotions. So we have our mind, which doesn't stop here. A lot of people think it's like the brain is your mind. No, it is our whole body, and it is coursing through every single cell through the fascia. So the fascia is tubular in nature, and it has this liquid crystal inside of it, and this gelatinous substance around all of the cells and the fascia called the ground substance. And this fluidity is part of us. It is our consciousness, our memories, our emotions. So much of what we are doesn't just stop. We're not just a machine of parts.
Right.
We are electrical magnetic beings, and we have an aura and energetic field that radiates from us. And what's cool now in this day and age, we can actually say that without being laughed at because we have data to show it.
Sure.
And it's real. And now that we recognize that and can bring this to healing in a space like Essential Therapies, it can be just mind-blowing and really provides that missing link.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, no, that's very, very cool. That's exciting.
So.
Well, you got an exciting year coming up, as you normally do.
Yeah,
but there's a lot, I think. It's going to be very fun to see what you're doing and sort of getting through some of these barriers and breaking through, some different ideas. Getting people to think differently, I think, is going to be a key for you based on, what we've talked about.
Absolutely. And we've already started some of these. In fact, we just started a few weeks ago a class called Myofascial Movement, and that's in-house. So Danny, one of my therapist, is also a yoga instructor, but we're not calling it yoga per se because it's not really yoga. She's also incorporating some hands-on myofascial techniques in the class, taking people through, and also focusing on breath and movement and neutral spine, which is important, which I mentioned. I also have a stress management class coming up in March here, starting to 4 weeks in a row of learning some of the background of stress management. Where did this all come from? Did you know 150 years ago they knew the techniques to help with this? And it's funny that here we are still not teaching it in every single class starting from grade school. And also a Legs Up the Wall course is coming out, so that's going to be virtual starting this month too. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's
fun
great.
stuff.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. Well, what else do you want people to know about what you're doing this year and maybe what you've done before as it maybe relates to where you're going? Is there anything else you want to sort of tell people about what's coming up?
Well, I think one of my biggest goals would be to continue to help people learn to be in channel 3, like I just mentioned, learning to be within and how to assess and feel. So I have this acronym CALM, the CALM technique, CALM, where I help people. And how this started was I came back to myself and I thought, how do I do self-treatment so effectively? How can I teach my patients this, And I realized I came up with this acronym is I connect. That's the C. I connect with my body. And, how many times do we do something and we're not really consciously there, right? We run through our subconscious programming all the time. So we have to connect and be conscious there, within ourselves. And then the A is to assess. So you need to assess what's going on in your body. Sometimes people feel that all day long. Other times people are totally shut off to it. So if you're not aware, you can't assess what's happening in your body. How can you fix it, right?
For sure.
So then the L stands for listen. So teaching people how to listen to their body. So you can assess, but now let's take that further. Let's go deeper and listen to what your body is doing based upon whatever you're giving it, right? So that's the L. And then M stands for move. So the move is could be move yourself off the couch and get on the floor and do some self-treatment, move into a place of doing treatment. Or maybe you're doing a technique and your body's talking to you and you're listening and it's saying, hey, I've been in this position too long, and we know that's not, we don't force the fascia ever. Yeah. And so we're listening and honoring. We're going to move out of that position, or we're going to, get to another place that's better, right? Yeah. And then the other thing is sometimes our body will go into what we call myofascial unwinding, which is really amazing. And so sometimes it's a local unwinding as we're working on a patient and we're at the barrier and our hand is stuck there, but we stay for a long enough time for all of these things to change. We use mechanotransduction and piezoelectric change that happens in phase transition, and then we get resonance. And so all of this is part of myofascial release. And as we get to that point where the body starts to let go, our hand may begin to move, and that's because the person's body is softening and moving and unwinding in a local area. Other times it can be really profound. I mean, our memories and our traumas are stuck in our body, so sometimes the body will literally move into a position of past trauma.
Wow.
And when you're really connected in a channel 3 state, allowing your body, just taking the brakes off, allowing your body to express this movement that maybe it needs to get back to, then, sometimes even memories come up. I once had a really bizarre situation happen when I was being treated by John himself. Actually, my body moved into this really strange position, and my head whipped weird, and my shoulder was weird. And at the end of the session, he had said to me, "Do you know anything about your birth?" And I said, I didn't really know much about my birth, except for that I knew back then that, my mom was not awake for my birth. Didn't see it. They put them under, right? So,
yeah.
So, I got up from the table as I'm getting dressed. I see this big red mark in the middle of my forehead. I'm like, that's weird, So I went back to the hotel, called my mom and said, hey, what do you remember about my birth? And she said, well, I know you were really stuck. Your shoulder was really stuck. And I don't remember which one it was, but they had to use forceps to get you out. And it was pretty traumatic. Of course, I don't remember because I was asleep, of course. But you had a red mark in the middle of your forehead for at least a week.
No way.
Because they put the forceps here and here instead of on the side of my head.
Oh.
And my mouth just dropped open like, what? Wow, I'm like, huh. So yeah, I have a red mark on my forehead right now, which didn't last a week, thank goodness. But, a couple hours later, it was gone. So
that's really fascinating.
Isn't that amazing? So
yeah.
It's like that tissue memory was there and it was expressed during that treatment. I know.
You have so many amazing stories.
Crazy stuff.
Stuff like that, where just things that you wouldn't think about. It's so cool.
Right. I don't know how I got into that, but anyway, that did happen along with some other things. So that's the calm technique, and I really want to help people because it's so amazing that I've been able to treat myself so much, and I still need treatment. I mean, I get treated also. I try to get treated regularly because it's nothing like, it's different than having a hands-on. But there's so much that we can do for ourselves, and it starts with a love for ourselves to be able to give that gift to ourselves, so that we can give more to all those around us who need us as well. So.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good way to end, I think.
Okay. Sounds good.
No, that's wonderful. And that's, I think, a good reason to come in and get some treatment and learn how to take care of yourself. And, so you can take care of yourself and take care of those around you. So.
And especially those who've tried so many things. I see so many people who've been very disillusioned by the traditional medical route, and not that that's a bad thing. Oftentimes it's very, traditional medicine is important, obviously, but we're failing people in a lot of ways because we're not acknowledging this part of the body-mind. And when there is something that can be done, and they just don't even know about it. That's always the saddest part to me. And people that I wish I could have seen before they had the surgery or before this happened, and they could have tried these techniques first. So that's really, that really hits me right here in my heart center to think, okay, how can I get this word out so that people can try something different before maybe doing something more invasive that they wish they didn't, or just to get their life back. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
That's wonderful. We're going to be talking about a lot of really exciting topics as this year, progresses, and we do more of these episodes, and we have some amazing guests lined up.
We do.
We really do. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to it, and just learning a lot, even myself, about what you do in this whole world. Right. I've learned a lot already, but it's always something interesting. I always learn something educational. So.
Great.
So thanks. All right.
All right.
Very good. See you next week.
Okay, bye.